What happens when a young, fearless conservative walks into the lion's den and tames the lion? That's exactly what happened when Karoline Leavitt went toe-to-toe with Rachel Maddow live on MSNBC. Rachel Maddow thought she was about to embarrass another conservative guest on national TV. Instead, Karoline flipped the whole show upside down. By the end of that interview, Maddow wasn't smiling. The audience? Silent. The producers? Panicking. What Karoline said live on air didn't just expose Rachel, it exposed the entire liberal media machine. And the best part? No one saw this coming. Let's break down exactly how Karoline took over the show and left MSNBC in pieces. It was supposed to be just another routine interview for MSNBC. Rachel Maddow was in her element, sharp suit, carefully styled set, and that signature look she gave every time she thought she had a conservative in her sights. You could almost feel the producers backstage smiling already, thinking about how this clip would trend on social media by morning. It was all part of the formula. Bring in a conservative. Frame them as extreme. Score cheap points with the audience. Post it online, rake in the likes, and pat themselves on the back for holding the powerful accountable. They've been running this playbook for years. But what they didn't count on was Karoline Leavitt walking onto that stage like she owned the place. Karoline wasn't like the usual Republican guests they dragged onto MSNBC, nervous, apologizing, desperate to be liked by the liberal media. No. She came in like a fighter stepping into the ring, gloves already taped, eyes locked in. The cameras panned over her as Rachel gave the intro. Tonight, we're joined by Karoline Leavitt, Trump's youngest former White House official and one of the loudest defenders of MAGA politics. Rachel's tone was dripping with that same condescension she always used when talking about conservatives. It was the voice of someone who thought she was about to enjoy an easy victory, like a cat playing with its food. The audience, trained like clockwork, gave a light chuckle. Rachel smirked. So, Karoline, you've made a career defending Donald Trump. With everything we know now, how can you honestly still support him? It was a trap. Same MSNBC routine. Frame the conservative as unreasonable. Get a defensive answer. Cut the clip. Go viral on X and TikTok by breakfast. But this time? The trap snapped shut on the hunter. Karoline didn't flinch. No awkward laugh. No nervous stumble. She leaned forward slightly, voice crisp, sharp, deadly calm. Rachel, she began, it's interesting how you start this interview pretending you're concerned about truth, when you spent years lying to the American people about Russian collusion. The air shifted. The MSNBC crowd stopped laughing. Rachel opened her mouth to interrupt, but Karoline wasn't done. You sat on this very show telling millions of Americans that Donald Trump was a Russian asset. You called anyone who disagreed with you a traitor or a fool. And yet, when that whole story collapsed, you never apologized. You just moved on to the next lie. For a second, the great Rachel Maddow didn't know what to say. You spent more time pushing discredited conspiracy theories than reporting on the real issues Americans care about: gas prices, inflation, border security, crime. And you want to sit here and tell me about defending the indefensible? Now the silence was heavy. The audience didn't know whether to clap, boo, or just hold their breath. Even the camera crew behind the scenes started shifting nervously. Rachel tried to find her footing. We report the facts here. Karoline pounced. Oh, really? Did you report the facts about the Hunter Biden laptop, too? Or was that just another Russian disinformation story that magically turned out to be true? For the first time in a long time, Rachel Maddow wasn't leading the conversation, she was trapped in it. And Karoline? Calm. Steady. Not rattled. Not apologizing. It wasn't supposed to go this way. MSNBC had invited Karoline hoping to embarrass her. Instead, they handed her the microphone and she used it like a hammer. And this? This was just the opening round. What Karoline said next, would have the entire MSNBC team wondering if they were about to become the headline on their own network. For a few seconds, Rachel Maddow just sat there. It was rare to see the queen of MSNBC on her back foot, but that's exactly what was happening. The usual fire in her eyes had been replaced with something else, hesitation. And Karoline wasn't going to waste the moment. She leaned in even closer, cool as ever. "I didn't come here to make friends, Rachel," she said. "I came here because Americans deserve to see the truth, something you and this network haven't provided in a long time." You could practically hear the heartbeat of the MSNBC producers pounding through the earpieces of the camera crew. Behind the scenes, people were scrambling. Do they cut to commercial? Do they let it ride? This wasn't supposed to happen. Rachel cleared her throat, forcing a smirk. "Well, we're having a debate here, not a lecture," she finally managed to say. Karoline smiled, sharp, confident. "I'm happy to debate. But I don't think you're used to someone bringing receipts." The audience didn't laugh this time. In fact, some of them looked uncomfortable, like they were realizing, for the first time, that maybe, just maybe, they hadn't been told the whole truth by their favorite network. And Karoline had only just begun. "You spent 3 years pushing the Russia hoax," she continued. "You said Trump colluded with Russia. That was false. You said the Steele dossier was credible. That was false. You said Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation. That was false. And yet here you are, acting like you have the moral high ground." Rachel's smile was gone now. Just tight lips. Tight jaw. You know that look liberals give when they know they've been caught, but don't want to admit it? Yeah, that one. "This isn't just about politics," Karoline pressed on. "It's about respect for the American people. Families out there are working 2 jobs just to keep up with the inflation your party caused, while you sit here, in your multi-million-dollar studio, pretending you speak for them." That was it. That was the moment the power shifted in the room. Rachel Maddow wasn't leading anymore. Karoline was in command now. The cameras stayed focused on Rachel's face, but you could tell even the MSNBC team behind the scenes didn't know what to do. And then Rachel tried one last move, the trump card MSNBC always played when they got cornered. "Well, Karoline, Trump is facing multiple investigations. Doesn't that concern you?" It was a weak swing. Everyone watching knew it. Karoline didn't miss a beat. Investigations run by the same political operatives who pushed the fake collusion narrative? Come on, Rachel. Even your audience knows that's a joke. And the thing was, she was right. Even some of the audience members, the ones who showed up to cheer on MSNBC, were now sitting silent, glancing around at each other like they didn't quite know whose side they were supposed to be on anymore. This wasn't a debate anymore, it was an exposure. Rachel Maddow, the queen of leftist spin, was being dismantled live, on her own turf. And that's when the producers finally cracked. "All right," Rachel said quickly, her voice tightening, "we need to take a quick break. More after this." Translation? Retreat. Damage control. Save what's left of the narrative. As the camera light flicked off, Karoline sat back in her chair, relaxed, smiling, like a lion watching a wounded gazelle limp away. But what no one knew yet was that the break wasn't going to save MSNBC. Because when they came back on air, Karoline was about to deliver the knockout blow. And America? They were watching every second. When MSNBC cut to commercial, the studio wasn't buzzing with energy like usual. It was tense. Uneasy. You could feel it through the TV screen, the crew, the producers, the stage managers all scrambling behind the scenes to figure out how to get their star host back in control. Rachel Maddow? She wasn't fixing her makeup. She wasn't laughing with producers like she usually did during breaks. No, Rachel was rattled. And right across from her sat Karoline Leavitt, calm, poised, sitting like she'd just come back from vacation, ready for round 2. When the cameras flipped back on, Rachel tried to recover. "All right, we're back with Karoline Leavitt, and I think we've covered a lot of ground here tonight," she said, forcing a chuckle. But let's get back to reality, shall we? Karoline leaned in, smiling. Let's, she said coolly, because reality is exactly what MSNBC's been avoiding for years. Boom. First punch right out of the break. Rachel tried again. Look, Karoline, people can argue about narratives, but the facts are clear. Trump's facing legal troubles, his base is shrinking, and Americans have moved on. Karoline didn't hesitate. She was ready for this. Rachel, she said firmly, you want to talk about shrinking support? Let's talk about how your own ratings have collapsed since Trump left office. Why? Because fear was your business model. You scared Americans into believing the Russia hoax, into thinking Hunter Biden's laptop was fake, into trusting bureaucrats who couldn't run a lemonade stand, let alone a country. Silence again. The audience could feel it. The liberal bubble they sat in for years was cracking right here, live on their favorite network. And here's the real reason you're panicking, Karoline continued, it's not about Trump. It's about you losing control of the narrative. Americans are waking up. They're turning off your broadcasts. They're finding their own voices online. And you can't stand it. Rachel was losing the room. For the first time, the camera caught her blinking fast, that signature nervous habit she always had when someone poked holes in her arguments. And while we're at it, Karoline added sharply, you spent weeks calling parents at school board meetings extremists, remember that? Ordinary moms and dads, labeled as domestic threats by your buddies in D.C. All because they dared to speak up. That's your reality. That was it. That was the breaking point. It wasn't just about Trump anymore. It was about the whole corrupt media machine that Rachel had been a part of for years. And Karoline was tearing it apart live, brick by brick, in front of an audience that, deep down, knew she was right. Rachel gave one last desperate attempt. We have different definitions of truth, apparently. Karoline didn't miss. No, Rachel. You have definitions of ratings. I have definitions of facts. And that's why your audience keeps shrinking while mine keeps growing. Even the audience couldn't help it anymore, some of them started clapping. Not loud. Not wild. But enough to signal that the tide had turned. The MSNBC brand, the whole act of smug superiority, the constant moral lectures, the fake outrage. It had just been exposed on live television by a young conservative woman who wasn't afraid to take them on their own turf. The camera cut to Rachel's face one more time, and for once, she wasn't smirking. She looked like someone who knew she'd just lost control of the conversation, maybe for good. Karoline sat back, satisfied. The producers were in chaos. The internet? Already exploding with clips, quotes, memes spreading faster than MSNBC could keep up. But Karoline wasn't done yet. She had one last card to play. And when she dropped it, the entire liberal media machine would feel it. This wasn't just a political debate anymore. It was a reckoning. Rachel Maddow, once the undisputed queen of liberal media, was sitting across from someone younger, sharper, and more fearless than anyone she'd ever faced on her show. And Karoline? She wasn't finished yet. You could see it in the way she leaned forward, not arrogant, not angry. Just steady, like someone who knew she was standing on the side of truth. Rachel shifted in her seat, clearly uncomfortable, but still trying to hold the line. Karoline, she said, her voice tightening, you're very good at attacking the media, but that doesn't solve the real problems this country is facing. Karoline tilted her head, almost amused. Rachel, the media is the problem. That landed like a cannonball in the studio. No one was expecting her to say it that plainly. But Karoline wasn't there for sound bites. She was there for war. For years, Karoline continued, networks like yours have protected corrupt politicians, covered up scandals, and lied to the American people, all to protect your political allies. And now that Americans are waking up, you call us the problem? Rachel was scrambling now. That's not how journalism works. Karoline's smile sharpened. Exactly. And you're proof of that. And that's when Karoline dropped the hammer. You called Trump supporters extremists. You called parents domestic terrorists. You pushed lies about border security, about inflation, about the Afghanistan withdrawal, about January 6th, about police officers, all because it made your side look better. But you forgot something important, Rachel, she paused, letting it hang. You forgot that the American people aren't stupid. The studio went dead silent. Even the MSNBC loyalists in the room couldn't deny that truth. Everyone knew it. Rachel tried to laugh it off, but there was no laughter left. Only the sound of MSNBC's carefully constructed illusion cracking, piece by piece, right there on live television. Behind the cameras, producers were whispering frantically. Some were already texting the PR team, trying to spin the disaster that was unfolding in front of them. And the worst part? Karoline wasn't yelling. She didn't have to. Her calm, steady delivery made it even worse. Like watching someone dismantle a machine one bolt at a time, while its designer watched helplessly. Do you know why your ratings are falling, Rachel? Karoline asked. It's not because people don't care about the news. It's because they finally figured out that people like you aren't giving them the news. You're giving them theater. Rachel sat there, lips tight, staring forward, eyes slightly wet not from emotion, but from sheer embarrassment. And while you sit here playing television games, Karoline added, families are struggling. They're struggling because of your party's policies. And instead of holding your friends accountable, you protect them. That's why I'm here. At that point, you could feel the internet catching fire. Clips were already flying across X, Facebook, YouTube, Telegram. Karoline Leavitt humiliates Rachel Maddow. MSNBC destroyed by facts on live TV. Finally, someone calls out the lies to their face. And just when it felt like Rachel might regain control, Karoline dropped one more devastating blow. Rachel, if you ever decide to start reporting the truth, I'll happily come back on your show. Until then? I'm done playing pretend. Boom. Finished. The knockout punch. Rachel's mouth opened slightly, as if to respond, but she knew it was over. She couldn't spin it. She couldn't reframe it. For the first time in her career, Rachel Maddow looked like she wanted to be anywhere else but her own show. The segment ended awkwardly. No slick outro. No inspiring quote. Just a cut to commercial. But the damage? Already done. And the internet? Exploding. But Karoline wasn't just about viral moments, she had a message. And when she left that studio, she made sure that America knew exactly what that message was. As the commercial break rolled, the studio felt more like a funeral than a news set. The producers were scrambling, whispering furiously behind the cameras, trying to salvage what was left of the segment. The audience didn't clap. They didn't smile. They didn't cheer. They sat. Quiet. Awkward. Watching Rachel Maddow, the liberal media's queen, sit there completely humiliated, searching for words that weren't coming. Meanwhile, Karoline Leavitt didn't gloat. She didn't boast. She just calmly stood up, adjusted her blazer, and walked off the set like she owned the place. She didn't need to say another word. She had done what no one had ever done on that show before, completely flipped the script. But here's where it got even worse for MSNBC. What happened next didn't stay in that studio. By the time Karoline's feet hit the sidewalk outside, her phone was blowing up. Clips of the exchange were already flooding X. Conservative commentators were cheering her on. Ordinary Americans, construction workers, teachers, veterans, moms, small business owners were reposting it, saying, finally. Someone said it to their face. Even people who didn't like Trump were reposting clips, admitting, I don't like her politics, but she told the truth. Within an hour, hashtags were trending, hashtag Maddow meltdown, hashtag Karoline uncensored, hashtag MSNBC lies. Meanwhile, MSNBC's official account was completely silent. No clips posted. No tweets. No statements. Nothing. Why? Because they knew what everyone else knew, they'd just lost the biggest fight they'd ever hosted on their own network. But it wasn't just about one interview. This moment was symbolic. It was personal for millions of Americans who felt like they'd been lied to, lectured to, insulted by elite media for years. And in Karoline, they finally saw someone fighting for them, someone who didn't back down, who didn't soften the truth just to get approval from the liberal elite. In the hours that followed, conservative media exploded. Tucker Carlson picked it up. Newsmax replayed the segment on a loop. Daily Wire headlines ran, "Karoline Leavitt embarrasses Maddow on her own show Live." And while Rachel Maddow's team huddled behind the scenes trying to plan damage control, Karoline was already doing live interviews on podcasts and news channels, explaining why she said what she said. "I'm not here for clicks. I'm here because the truth matters." And for too long, the truth has been buried by these media giants who think they're better than you, better than me, better than America. The next morning, MSNBC issued a brief, watered-down statement, calling the interview spirited and respectful dialogue. But no one was buying it. The viral clips spoke for themselves. What made it so powerful wasn't that Karoline screamed or attacked personally. It was the calm, controlled, undeniable facts. Delivered by someone who knew what everyday Americans were feeling in their hearts. Tired of being insulted for voting differently. Tired of being called racist or extremist for wanting secure borders. Tired of millionaire TV hosts pretending to care about working-class families from behind their multi-million-dollar studios. And Karoline said it. Live. To their faces. That's why it went viral. That's why it mattered. And that's why, in that moment, Rachel Maddow's career shifted forever. She didn't just lose a debate that night, she lost her image of control. As for Karoline, she walked out of that studio with something far more valuable than MSNBC's approval, the respect of Americans who've been ignored for too long. A microphone. And a message too powerful to silence. And MSNBC knew it. Subscribe for more stories the mainstream won't show you. This is just the beginning.